We lose ourselves in what we read, only to return to ourselves, transformed and part of a more expansive world. Let's face it. We're undone by each other. And if we're not, we're missing something. If this seems so clearly the case with grief, it is only because it was already the case with desire. One does not always stay intact. It may be that one wants to, or does, but it may also be that despite one's best efforts, one is undone, in the face of the other, by the touch, by the scent, by the feel, by the prospect of the touch, by the memory of the feel. And so when we speak about my sexuality or my gender, as we do, and as we must, we mean something complicated by it. Neither of these is precisely a possession, but both are to be understood as modes of being dispossessed, ways of being for another, or, indeed, by virtue of another. Possibility is not a luxury, it is as crucial as bread. If Lacan presumes that female homosexuality issues from a disappointed heterosexuality, as observation is said to show, could it not be equally clear to the observer that heterosexuality issues from a disappointed homosexuality? Love is not a state, a feeling, a disposition, but an exchange, uneven, fraught with history, with ghosts, with longings that are more or less legible to those who try to see one another with their own faulty vision. When we lose certain people, or when we are dispossessed from a place, or a community, we may simply feel that we are undergoing something temporary, that mourning will be over and some restoration of prior order will be achieved. If I lose you, under these conditions, then I not only mourn the loss, but I become inscrutable to myself. Who am I, without you? When we lose some of these ties by which we are constituted, we do not know who we are or what to do. On one level, I think I have lost you, only to discover that I have gone missing as well. The misapprehension about gender performativity is this, that gender is a choice, or that gender is a role, or that gender is a construction that one puts on, as one puts on clothes in the morning, that there is a one who is prior to this gender, a one who goes to the wardrobe of gender and decides with deliberation which gender it will be today. As a result, gender is not to culture as sex is to nature, gender is also the discursive/cultural means by which sex nature, or a natural sex, is produced and established as pre-discursive, prior to culture. A politically neutral surface on which culture acts. There is no reason to assume that gender also ought to remain as too. The presumption of a binary gender system implicitly retains the belief in a mimetic relation of gender to sex whereby gender mirrors sex or is otherwise restricted by it. What is most important is to cease legislating for all lives what is livable only for some, and similarly, to refrain from proscribing for all lives what is unlivable for some. If the immutable character of sex is contested, perhaps this construct called sex is as culturally constructed as gender. Indeed, perhaps it was always already gender, with the consequence that the distinction between sex and gender turns out to be no distinction at all. The effect of gender is produced through the stylization of the body and, hence, must be understood as the mundane way in which bodily gestures, movements, and styles of various kinds constitute the illusion of an abiding gendered self. This formulation moves the conception of gender off the ground of a substantial model of identity. If there is something right in Beauvoir's claim that one is born, but rather becomes a woman, it follows that woman itself is a term in process, a becoming, a constructing that cannot rightfully be said to originate or to end. As an ongoing discursive practice, it is open to intervention and resignification. Whether or not we continue to enforce a universal conception of human rights at moments of outrage and incomprehension, precisely when we think that others have taken themselves out of the human community as we know it, is a test of our very humanity. A phenomenon that gave rise to my first critical insight into the subtle ruse of power. The prevailing law threatened one with trouble, all to keep one out of trouble. Hence, I concluded that trouble is inevitable in the task, how best to make it, what best way to be in it.